So Games Workshop have turned their potato camera up to 11 when they've teased this blurry picture of a new Space Marine battling Vastor. From the clues and the context and the appearance of the thing, it seems very likely that we're looking at a new sculpt of Chapter Master Azrael of the Dark Angels. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking about some Space Marine teasers, and this time it truly is a teaser, not a leak. As like a few shots of new models recently, it is something that Games Workshop has given to us subtly. Another small teaser of a model that's going to be coming out, probably within the next half a year or so. It looks like there's been a fair amount of chatter on the internet already as to whether or not this represents a new sculpt of Azrael, and I personally feel like it almost certainly is. So I think that 40k fans are certainly well used to getting blurry pictures of new models come out with suspicious regularity, some of which I believe are genuine mistakes from Games Workshop, often coming from unexpected areas of their social media and things, but this one, alongside a fair few that Games Workshop have teased us so far, do seem to be really quite deliberate, giving us a bit of a hint of the model without giving us the full thing shown off. We had that with the Rogue Dawn tank recently, with 3 different pictures of it coming out before we actually got to see the whole model, and it looks like they might be at it again with the Chapter Master of the Dark Angels. This image comes from their preview trailer for the Arcs of Omen books, and it was one that was shown off during their Grand Narrative teasers, the same one as they showed off Vastor himself and the World Eater's new models like those 8-bound. Basically, in the Arcs of Omen book trailer, they show us that one's called Abaddon, one's called Angron, and one's called Vastor. And for the most part, the books just do a bit of a cool animated thing with some lens flare and stuff moving across the screen, but they very briefly open up and spool through a page or two. I couldn't see anything enormously obvious from the other two when looking at it myself. There was a big picture of Angron, but the one for the third book in the Vastor one, that's the one that's of note today. It does show Vastor himself, possibly having a duel with the new Azrael model. This one really is quite a subtle one by Games Workshop standards as well. The possible new model comes from behind a bunch of lens flare and is really quite blurry in the first place, given that it's only a still frame from a fast moving book, though it is kind of interesting that it's basically escaped detection from anyone until earlier today. As best I can tell, the first post that I could see about it was from about 12 hours ago on a Dark Angels subreddit, and I'll link that one down in the video description. Not sure if they were the first people to spot it, but that's the earliest that I could see with a little bit of searching. In any case, a big congrats to whoever spotted it first. Since then, I've had several people send it out to me, so thanks for that. Always good to pore over some very blurry pictures of new Space Marines. Let's take a look at the image in a bit more detail and see what we can learn. Here we have the image in question then. A still from the new book with the title The Rock Besieged. You can quite easily read that just from the blurry text, to be honest, though it looks like someone from that Reddit has written it out themselves as well. I guess that confirms that among the things that Vastor is going to be doing to the galaxy, it's going to be having a good old fight with the Dark Angels, I guess. Doesn't really tell us exactly what part of the galaxy he's in though, as the Rock of course is the great big mobile fortress monastery of the Dark Angels and can go from place to place. From a quick search, as best I could tell, there was reports of it fighting against the Chaos in the Cadian sector along and around the Fall of Cadia. I remember hearing some recent lore about Luther escaping the Rock alongside some Fallen, and supposedly he's somewhere out there in the galaxy amassing an army of Fallen to try and fight the Dark Angels once more. It was just outright stated in older Dark Angels codexes that Lionel Johnson is lying asleep somewhere on the Rock, waiting for the day of reckoning for the Unforgiven to come, when supposedly he springs into action and gives the Chaos a good kicking. I do find that kind of curious on the lore front though, seeing as there's been literal battles fought against Chaos on the Rock itself. Just seems a bit weird that he'd remain sleeping on the Rock while that was happening. Otherwise I can't make out any of the rest of the blurry text. It's in far smaller writing and the resolution is bad. But if anyone else can make out more of the text, or knows a technique for trying to get it a bit better, then please let us know down in the comments. In any case, the rest of the image still is very blurred, but you can clearly make out that Vastor is right in the centre of it. Kind of hard to make out the backdrop too well, but on the left of the shot it looks like he's got a whole bunch of minions as backup. I think that they're Black Legion Space Marines as best I can tell from that, judging by the armour, and I feel like I can see a couple of Havocs on the ridge above him. There's then a few blue and red type things in front of him as well. My first thought was maybe Ultramarines fighting him or something like that, but actually from taking a closer look myself, I do think that they're almost certainly blue horrors and brimstone horrors. You can see the little gouts of flame that the blue horrors are holding in orange, and the orange ones look a bit broken up. Maybe it's just trying to represent him leading a bit of a mishmash chaos force perhaps. Of course the most interesting thing for this video though are the Dark Angels that he appears to be fighting on the right. We've got a central Space Marine holding up a sword to point at Vastor, and he also seems to have a retinue of Deathwing Terminators. I think that they're the Deathwing Knights, and I think we can see some Maces of Absolution in there. Obviously the Space Marine is the most important thing. As for that Space Marine figure, maybe intentionally, it's got a great big beam of light passing through it from one of the lens flare type effects, but I feel that this guy has a whole load of details that you can make out that are very consistent with a new updated Azrael sculpt. As the person on the Reddit page seems to have helpfully outlined for us, it does appear that he's got a back banner, which not a lot of the newer Space Marines have. That would certainly be very in keeping with the older model. The robes that he's wearing do appear to be either white or bone coloured, as the Azrael's are at the moment, and he's holding the sword aloft in perhaps a similar sort of pose, maybe a bit more dynamic and pointing, as opposed to just generally holding it up for everyone to see. For a sword that's called the Sword of Secrets, he does seem to be showing it off a little. Otherwise, can't really see what's going on with his other arm. Perfectly possible that he could be holding the Lion's Wrath there, and the figure just doesn't really seem to be that reminiscent of other options from the Dark Angel's army. Lazarus isn't holding his sword aloft, and Belial does have a back banner but has his sword in the other hand, plus he doesn't really have the bone white robes. I feel that just on basis of probabilities, he is most likely to represent a new Azrael model. As a choice, I guess Azrael will make a lot of sense to regenerate. The Dark Angels have only had one of their unique characters go into Primaris form so far, that was Captain Lazarus a while back. I guess at some stage all the Space Marine chapters are going to be getting the Black Templars treatment, a fair few character kit releases, plus maybe a couple of squads of specialists, all regenerated in Primaris with a bunch of fancy resculpts. Azrael will be an absolutely prime candidate for this treatment, whether it's with the rest of the range or early. His miniature is very old at these days, certainly a classic one from 40k's past and a little bit out of place with some of the more modern things. Certainly a very nice sculpt, but again one that maybe shows its age a little bit. Being the chapter master of one of the most famous chapters in all of 40k is another big reason to have a new model. I'd guess almost certainly crossing the Rubicon Primaris, and I guess they could certainly have him grievously injured at the hands of Vashtor perhaps. That does seem to be the usual way with these Primaris remakes. Rules wise, I'd be surprised if we get a new Dark Angels Codex within 9th edition. We have already had one towards the start of it, and to be honest the rules seem to hold up kind of fine. Space Marines in general are doing pretty rubbish in 9th edition right now, though I do kind of feel that's more core rules and core army datasheets as opposed to their special rules from their individual chapters. I guess if they do redo Azrael, they might well issue a downloadable datasheet, or potentially they could have his rules in one of these campaign books, I guess, though they did say that they were trying to move away having your rules spread out between loads of different sources. Currently Azrael is very strong in game, I think. He's got some really nice command abilities, plus the 4+ invul save for nearby infantry and bikes. I guess going to Primaris usually gets you more attacks and things. It might just make him into a little bit more formidable of a melee combatant. In any case, could be some pretty fun times for the Dark Angels if that does turn out to be the case. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think that this is a new version of Chapter Master Azrael or not? And let me know why down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that links down in the video description if you'd be interested in supporting. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.